You may not know it yet because THC is everywhere. Online ads, in your email box, websites that you read. How about the DEA, the Drug Enforcement Administration, painted a giant target on the back of THCA businesses in 2024. The federal agency has gone on record stating that these products, in their opinion, do not qualify as legal hemp. We've got the details of their letter. We're going to break down exactly what it says, what this means for the millions of people who use or sell these products, and why a full-scale federal crackdown may be underway right now. I'm cannabis lawyer Tom Howard, asking you to subscribe if the news appeals to you, because you need to understand what's coming. In fact, they could already be tracking you, building a case, just waiting for the definition to change in your state or funding to be made available. First, the federal loophole that started it all. To really get why the DEA issued its 2024 THC letter, we have to go back to the so-called legal loophole that birthed the entire THCA market. It started with the 2018 Farm Bill. The legislation that legalized hemp, it did this by defining hemp as any cannabis plant or anything made from it with no more than 0.3% delta-9 THC by dry weight. This was done because Congress makes mistakes. They thought it would not get you high, and they are right. You have to light the joint on fire. Many of the THCA products are specifically sold to be lit on fire, even sold near lighters at smoke shops. Hemp only cares about delta-9 THC, but the same Farm Bill set testing for programs making that hemp to check its total THC because it's loaded with its parent compound, a non-intoxicating acid called tetrahydrocannabinolic acid, or THCA. However, to help out farmers that did not want to lose their crop, the test is no more than 30 days before harvest, before more than 70% of the cannabinoids show up. A pretty bad federal rule that exacerbated this loop. You can think of THCA as THC in its raw meat form. No one is really eating it uncooked because it won't get you high. But the moment you apply heat by smoking, vaping, or cooking, a process called decarboxylation happens. This chemical reaction strips an acid group from the THCA molecule, instantly converting it into psychoactive delta-9 THC. Just like throwing those raw burgers on the grill makes them way more appealing, so does sparking that THCA pre-roll you bought from a gas station. Now, we've reported on THCA flower 6 years ago, but most famously from 2 years ago when it really started to blow up. And that prompted the DEA to, 12 months later, finally issue a letter. And that's, at the time, based on stare decisis, which is a Latin meaning for case law that a court should do it as well. Now, the DEA issued this letter in May of 2024, and its opinion started right from the text, and that's really kind of how it goes. Now, this was actually in response to an administrative lawyer, Shane Pittington's email regarding the controlled status of THCA. The DEA finally responded to that approximately a month later, and it starts out like so many administrative letters, nothing but the letter of the law, and they cited to it, which in this case was particularly section 1639.0, the definition of hemp, but it then says delta-9, and then it gets further into that subsection as how it's defined under the Farm Bill. Now, this is just the regulator, the DEA in this case, telling a lawyer who asked for its opinion what it believes the law to be. And it said this. Let's go to the actual text of the letter itself. In regards to THCA, Congress has directed that when determining whether a substance constitutes hemp, the delta-9 THC concentration is to be tested using post-decarboxylation or other similarly reliable methods. So that decarboxylation process converts delta-9 THCA into delta-9 THC, Thus, for the purposes of enforcing the hemp definition, the delta-9 THC level must include all delta THCA. Accordingly, cannabis-derived THCA does not meet the definition of hemp under the Controlled Substances Act because upon conversion for identification purposes as required by Congress, it is equivalent to delta-9 THC, a Schedule I controlled substance under the CSA. This makes a lot of sense if you think about it. Potential THC in your THCA flower is about 87% of the amount of its THCA. Breaking off that acid causes the THCA to lose about 13% of its weight. Now, this letter was written by the DEA in May of 2024. Interestingly enough, an opinion and stare decisis 40 years with the Chevron doctrine seemed that would be the end of THCA exploitation, as people would listen to what the DEA had to say and give it deference. But do you know what happened the very next month? I'll tell you. In June, late June 28th, I believe, 2024, the Supreme Court decision in Raimondo, which overruled Chevron's doctrine. Courts no longer have to just nod along to what agencies like the DEA think. While it may no longer be legally binding because the Chevron doctrine doesn't exist anymore, the reviewing court may still look at the totality of the circumstances, including what the agency has to say, for example, the DEA in this case. So, you bought pre-rolls, you say. Now, what's the point of those pre-rolls? What's the point of this smokable hemp flower outside of the definition that says delta-9 THC? So it's 25% total THC, 26% THCA, 0.2% delta-9 THC, and that's hemp to you. Right. So anyway, 2024 melted away to 2025, and Congress realized there sure was a lot of online weed being sold as hemp. Evidently, an opinion letter from the DEA wasn't enough if your lawyer sold you a legal opinion letter saying that THCA flower is hemp under the Farm Bill. Let me digress for one fun fact before we get back to it. The reason why so many states or companies want to list THCA on their packages is to make it seem like their products have more THC in it, because THCA, as we already discussed, inflates the amount of THC by about 13%. Because to get to total THC, you take the THCA strip off the acid, you lose about 13% of it, and so it seems like you're getting a stronger plant when you advertise the THCA content. Now back to it. What does federal enforcement actually look like right now? Judging by the DEA's letter and the current events, it's a mix of guidance, state-level support, and the ever-present threat of direct action. First, public records show no large-scale federal raids or arrests specifically targeting THCA businesses in 2025. The DEA's 2025 National Drug Threat Assessment, released in May of this year, prioritized combating synthetic drugs like fentanyl. In fact, in September of 2025, the agency has been focused elsewhere, seizing millions of fentanyl pills, making more than 2,100 fentanyl-related arrests. THCA has not been singled out for a specific federal operation, but that doesn't mean they're not watching. Given that THCA is widely sold online, it's highly plausible that the DEA's Diversion Control Division is already monitoring online vendors, reviewing websites, and tracking interstate shipments. This is a standard tool in their arsenal to prevent controlled substances from moving through legitimate channels of post office, FedEx, and UPS. Pressure on those carriers could suffocate the online market overnight. And let's get into some examples where, maybe not overtly from the DEA, but in conjunction with states' law enforcement support. In August of 24, the DEA provided support to local enforcement officials in Allen, Texas during raids of 9 CBD and vape shops suspected of trafficking THCA products. Authorities seized inventory valued at $8,000 to $10,000, and many of these items testing at over 25% THCA, and arrested 5 individuals. Now, this operation also involved subpoenas for business records, and it prompted a lawsuit, of course, from the hemp industry, alleging overreach and other methods. The case is still pending in the U.S. District Court for the Eastern District of Texas. We'll see how that turns out, but it underscores the tension between federal guidance and local implementation, and that's evolving. State-level crackdowns, citing the DEA's position, have proliferated since the letter's release in May of 24. In Georgia, over a dozen raids have resulted in felony marijuana trafficking charges against THCA vendors with products deemed non-compliant under heated testing. The DEA only uses gas chromatographs. They don't differentiate between THC and THCA in their tests. Similar actions in Arkansas, Tennessee, and Texas reflect a patchwork of these prohibitions. With more than 20 states imposing restrictions or bans on intoxicating hemp products, you could see these developments suggesting DEA guidance, empowering local authorities as part of their strategy to gather intelligence on the $28 billion hemp-derived cannabinoid market, without committing resources for intensive federal prosecution. That makes a lot of sense because most crimes are local affairs, not federal matters. There's also judicial hurdles that may explain the tempered approach. Federal courts have pushed back on expansive DEA interpretations of cannabinoids. For example, there was a ruling in 2024 regarding the legality of THCA acetate, expressly citing the Loophole opinion as for reasons why they didn't have to give deference to the DEA. Many of those cases have been walked back in 2025, but still, there are stalled provisions, soon to be 2026 Farm Bill, to codify total THC and other changes to what constitutes hemp. So we'll have to just see how this plays out, but the proposed changes in the Farm Bill or the appropriations bills could further empower DEA oversight by redefining hemp to exclude these intoxicating cannabinoids and then giving that data to state-level actors so that those states could prosecute THCA businesses in their jurisdiction. For example, in Texas or other jurisdictions, collaboration between local authorities and the DEA have targeted shops with online components, suggesting a strategy of indirect pressure rather than overt federal interventions. And just this month, Texas Senator Perry sent a letter to the department in Texas charged with drafting their new rules to clarify that THCA has always been excluded from hemp's definition in consistency with the DEA's opinion from 2024. Now, for vendors and consumers, the message is kind of clear. Direct enforcement by the DEA may be limited. Plausibility of surveillance kind of underscores the risks. As states move to make hemp rope and not dope again, the DEA could have data ready to go for Florida, for Texas, for North Carolina, for Kentucky, for Tennessee, for Illinois. The list goes on. They could just be ready nationwide if they redefine hemp. Look at what just happened in September when Attorney General Bondi and head of HHS RFK traveled to Bensenville, Illinois for a press con after raiding a warehouse, announcing seizure of over 600,000 units of illegal vapes distributed at Midwest Goods valued at $86.5 million retail, and even involved the U.S. Customs and Border Patrol in a joint operation at Chicago ports. Following the Chicago operation, raids in other states like Georgia uncovered large quantities smuggled from China. Bondi directed the ATF to prioritize enforcement against retailers selling these items. So much so that on September 23rd, the DEA put out a press release about this, calling it Operation Vape Trail, showcasing its notable seizures, profiling seizures of gummies, vapes, cash, and even marijuana. The DEA touted taking this stuff and arresting illegals and targeting smoke shops near military bases. The takeaway is unmistakable. THCA is not as legal or safe as the industry marketing suggests. The DEA's 2024 letter, combined with judicial shifts that we see from case law in 2025, congressional efforts, and the enforcement with those states, make the THCA market far more limited. The DEA is not coming out directly, but it could be lurking, gathering data for when your state restricts the definition of hemp, or for when the feds restrict the definition of hemp. And this is a story that's changing by the day. And what do you think about this federal push? Are you a consumer or a business owner who's going to be affected? Let us know in the comments below. Many of them are making money in THCA and think the law won't change, ever, whether in Texas, North Carolina, or federally. This type of wishful thinking may see them locked up and using that quick cash they made on lawyers. And if you want to stay ahead of the story, make sure to like this video, subscribe, hit the notification bell. The fight over cannabis is far from over. THCA did not legalize marijuana. That's what we're here to do, and we'll be giving you analysis about policy and facts every step of the way. And now check out this video starting right now.